Here today. But not only do I want you to get key insights, I also want you to learn from people that are actually doing the work. Oftentimes in our evaluations, people do share with us that the executive panel is where they really found great value throughout the day. Because these individuals aren't necessarily professional speakers, although they are amazing speakers, but these people are doing what you do day in and day out. So about to join me here on stage right now, if you will, please join me in welcoming Emily Mackinnon, partner litigator at Osler, as well as Alison Manning, Vice President, People and Culture at Parkland. Welcome. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. Come on down. Alison, thank you so much. Emily, glad that you could be here. And I want to remind you that you also have the QR code on the back of your participants, not participants workbook, it's an Insight Ideas workbook. So any question you want to ask the executive panel, please put that forward, and I'll be keeping an eye on my phone throughout our conversation to see what questions you would like to hear from them. But before we kick into too much and get too deep, maybe can we go alphabetically? Is that the easiest way to go? Alison, if you wouldn't mind starting then, and tell us a little bit about yourself and the journey that has led you to your current role and the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you very much. It's very wonderful to be here today in the presence of such strong and capable women, and I couldn't be here without the shout out to my Parkland team over here. But I started in HR. It wasn't a direct path by any means. I was working in administration at the University of Victoria, and somebody said, hey, I've got this small software company. They need somebody in HR. Do you want to do it? And I was like, I don't know anything about HR. And they said, you'll figure it out. And I did. With that company, it was back in early 2000s, so we hired about 175 people. 2 years later, we were back down to 35 people. So that was quite a roller coaster. And then the same person said, hey, there's another job out here in HR. Do you want it? And I took it, and that was with Columbia Fuels on Vancouver Island. Worked there for a few years, and in 2009, we got bought by Parkland. And Parkland is a fuel distribution company that operates now in 26 countries. But when I started, we were 400 people. So I've seen a tremendous amount of growth. We've done a tremendous amount of acquisitions. You probably don't know who Parkland is, but you might know some of our brands, which is Chevron and M&M Food Market we own now. So my career has been very fulfilling. Parkland has been extremely good to me and allowed me to grow my career from an HR manager of 100 people to a vice president for our Canadian operations, which is over about 2,600 people. So.
Something tells me they're going to want to know how that journey went from manager to vice president. I mean, let's give some acknowledgement to that. That's quite an accomplishment. Yes. And Emily, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey, a little bit more about Osler.
So I similarly have a very circuitous path. For a while, I thought I was going to be an opera singer.
Can we hear a note or two?
So, perhaps on a bigger stage.
Okay.
So I studied that for a while, and then I thought, well, maybe not. Maybe instead I'll study ethnomusicology, which is a word no one has ever heard of. And so I accumulated a master's in that, and then emerged and thought, well, nobody wants to pay you to be an ethnomusicologist, as it turns out. So what am I going to do? And my best friend from childhood, bless her, said, I think you should go be a lawyer. And I thought, I guess. And so I applied, got into law school, and fortunately loved it, and turned out to be good at it, the magical combination. And so now I'm a litigation partner with the law firm of Osler. I like to say that litigating is the closest I can get to singing an opera in the corporate world. And you heard a bit from my partner this morning, Maureen Kaloran, the chair of our firm, about the wonderful environment that Osler provides for women. It's a fantastic firm to work with. I have a badass group of female partners and associates who I work with, many of whom are here today. Shout out to you. And I think all the time about women in leadership. It's something that we talk about and that we focus on and that we're really excited about.
Excellent. And how is that pay comparison to that previous opportunity pays a little teeny tiny bit better. If you couldn't get anyone to pay you before, you're doing okay?
What are you suggesting about my skills as an opera singer?
That you are worth every penny. That's what I'm suggesting. You're worth every penny. And so let's continue the conversation then. As we focus on the importance of empowering women leaders, what qualities or skills do you believe are essential for women leaders to develop and to thrive and lead confidently in today's world of work? Who wants to open that up? Emily, you want to take it on?
We've drawn straws and decided that it should be me. So it's an interesting conversation, I think, whether there are different skills for leadership as between women and men. I think many of the traits are probably the same, but the way they're received in a room can often be different, depending on whether you are a woman or a man. And I think often to execute those leadership skills, sometimes as a woman you need different underlying skills. So you can need a touch of fearlessness that can help, a bit of resilience. But I actually think the most important trait in a leader is self-awareness, that you're always reflecting on how you conduct yourself, that you are reading the room, understanding how what you're doing is being received. The best lessons I've ever had as a leader is making terrible mistakes. I had a group of 30 people I was leading once, and I was attempting to be challenging, to provide a difficult environment for them to say, the bar is very high. And it was a complete disaster. They were entirely demoralized, and everyone hated me by the end. That was about 20 years ago. And I engaged in a lot of self-reflection after that, did a lot of reading, and entirely changed my approach. And now I firmly believe that the best path to leadership is extending respect and trust and humility, being genuine and authentic whenever you can, and constantly reflecting on your leadership and how it's being received and whether you are inspiring the people around you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I'd top that. I think the one thing that I have found specifically in the last few years is having a group of women who support you no matter what, and having those women tell you when you could have done that better, and just that way of saying, you know what, you were fantastic, but I think you can work on this thing, or I always ask for feedback. And so I think it's super important to not beat yourself up and know that you can do what it is you set out to do if you really put your mind to it. And yes, and just like we heard today, having some of that, being very empathetic and supporting one another, because you don't get anywhere by putting anybody down so that you can try and move yourself up.
Wow. Nobody wants to go to that special place in hell.
Nope.
And I love what you're saying, though, Alison, because it also reminds me that I really challenge people to stop asking for feedback. Because you can't change the past. 5 minutes ago, 5 hours ago, 5 days ago, I can't do that. But I love the growth mindset and the journey of getting better. So instead of asking for feedback, consider asking for feed forward. You did the best damn job you could at that moment. And the next time I do this,
how could I do better?
Yeah. I mean, if you ever get an email from me, bill@billgwilliams.com, the signature will always be a quote from Dr. Maya Angelou. Do the very best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. Absolutely.
And isn't that the goal of leadership, to constantly find out what is that better?
Make everyone's life better and better every single day, right? Changing the world.
Exactly.
One individual at a time. Power in the house. Questions are beginning to come through already, so keep voting on those questions. And when we get to 12 or more people that are interested in that question, a dozen of you, I'm going to ask that question. So we will go off book a little bit from your colleagues and fellows that are in the audience. But you want to go for it?
Oh, no, I was just going to say improv. I'm here for it.
Great, improv, I love it. Okay, and so maybe, Alison, you can open this one for us, if you would. Mentorship and sponsorship can play a significant role in overcoming adversity and fostering career growth. Could you share the role that mentorship or sponsorship have played in your own career journey? And then how do you actively seek out and engage mentors and sponsors?
Super good question. I think I have had so many mentors in my life that I didn't even, really realize were mentors at that time. When I started out my career, I was not very confident. I spoke a good game, but I wasn't very confident inside. And I think I had my first, true manager and true mentor at UVic said, you got to get out of this institution because you're better than that. And I went, what are you talking about? And he's like, you have so much creativity. He really built me up. He built up my confidence until I, sort of took that leap of a very, secure job. I had 2 kids. It was 4 days a week. I had 6 weeks of vacation. I thought I was set. I went to a job that, challenged everything I had. And especially trying to do that with 2 small children. And but it was the best thing I'd ever done in my life. So, and I've had several great bosses at Parkland. Each one of them, anybody who knows Parkland, I've had several bosses. I've managed to stay there for 18 years, but I've had several bosses, and each one of them has had a conversation with me that says, you need to build up your confidence because you can do this. And they threw assignments at me that I thought were going to kill me some days, but it really stretched me. And I made mistakes. I made so many mistakes, but luckily there was somebody there to catch me and to guide me. And so I can't tell you how much those mentors in my life have shaped my career. And I just recently have started mentoring some folks at Parkland and telling them my story or, helping guide them through some of their challenges. And you forget what it's like to be a new manager, right? Somebody that's supervising people for the first time. And it is so rewarding to give those people a helping hand and guide them in the right direction.
I love it. Awesome.
That's inspiring. And I hear entirely what you're saying about finding and meeting challenges. I think the best mentors, or as we often call them, champions, are the ones who conduct themselves in a way that you want to learn from. So I want to surround myself with people who are doing things in a way that I want to do them, or who are doing them better than I am. Someone I know said, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Well-known catchphrase. But it's true. The people I want to be my champions and mentors are the ones who are smarter and better and work harder and are faster than I am, so that I can learn to do it too.
Beautiful. I'm going to go off book. Are you ready for this? Improv?
So ready.
Ready to go? So this is a question from Anonymous, who has got a lot of questions. But their first one was 68 people voting on this. And I'm going to, again, just from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective, change a little bit of the language just around gender to be a little bit more inclusive. But what do you think the contemporary men's perspective is on leadership? Is our vision as women in leadership compatible? And how can we build bridges?
I love that.
It's a great question.
Super good question.
Pregnant pause.
I can say that, in some ways, leadership is leadership. I have worked for some very, some male colleagues, and I have a lot of great male colleagues, and a lot of great male bosses or managers. Their style is different than mine. And I actually just had this conversation with my boss just last week where I said, your style is not my style. And if that's what you're looking for, then you're going to have to adapt because I'm not going anywhere. But his aggressiveness and his, you got to get in there and you've got to have pointy elbows. And it's like, no, I don't. I have to get in that room. I have to listen to what people's concerns are, and I have to help solve problems. That's what my job is. My job isn't to be the most popular, and trust me, being in P&C or HR, I'm not the most popular most of the time. But I do believe that I've earned people's respect. And men or women, I can't say that I treat them differently. I think I adapt my style based on who it is. But that's on a person-by-person basis, not necessarily a gender-by-gender basis.
Thank you.
It's very true that different situations require different leadership, I think. One of the attributes I think about most often in terms of this gender divide is empathy. I actually think empathy is one of the biggest tools you can use for leadership, understanding who you're speaking to and what they need to be inspired. And I think as women, it's our secret weapon. We are socialized in a way that makes it easier for us to demonstrate empathy. And I think that initially, from some male-tagged viewpoints, there has been some resistance to the idea of using empathy in leadership, that it's perceived as weak, or that you are a pushover, that you are too soft-hearted. And I think the biggest tool you can use to counter that is empathy. Thank you. So understanding where they're coming from and then just relentlessly demonstrating how effective it is in the workplace.
Fair enough. I mean, if I may chime in, would that be okay? I mean,
You may speak, man.
Thank you. I've been in women-dominated industries my whole career. You know, whether it was in hospitality and tourism, in retail banking, in travel and tourism again, and in leadership development and talent development. My experience is that so many men listen, clarify, and fix. And women demonstrate empathy. They listen, clarify, and then they bring out the best in the team. Who has ideas? How can we make this better? How can we solve this problem? There's so many opportunities, and the proof is in the data that a balanced and a diverse leadership team, a balanced and a diverse board have stronger results. There's no question. So this next one, again, off book from the audience, has got 65 people that want to know what your thoughts are here. Can you talk about men who were allies in your career, and how or what did they do to support you in your journey? That's another Good one.
This is going to sound cliched, but my husband is probably my biggest ally. He is the one who has dealt with our house administration while I worked myself to the bone and supported me in everything I did. I remember he used to brag to his work colleagues that my bonus was approaching his salary.
Yes.
And they... And they never quite knew how to take it. Like,
men aren't very smart sometimes. They didn't understand and couldn't do the math.
like, should I laugh or extend sympathy, or do you need marriage counseling?
I thought I was going to have to go to marriage counseling when my husband found out that I was making almost double or over double what he was. So it's a hit to the ego for them, that's for sure. But I would say the same. I mean, my husband is my biggest advocate, my biggest supporter, and listens to me. And you know, we listen to each other. We've both got careers, but I would say, you know, some of the male leaders that I've had that have really supported me have, I don't know, I guess I don't exactly know what they saw in me, but I think...
do.
But I always attribute it to my father. My father actually just passed away this year, but he was at 95, he was a trucker by trade. And when you talk about dropping the F-bomb, well, that was I think that was one of my first words. And so he's, you know, tells the worst jokes. And I think coming through that, and I have 2 older brothers, I think I was sort of used to dealing with sort of males in general and how to sort of get where I needed to be and make them hear me. And I'll just tell this very quick story about when my dad bought a brand new truck. It was Ford, you know, and it had club cab and it was a long box or whatever, and I was 17. And he said, "You'll never get that thing out of the driveway." And I grabbed his keys and I said, "You watch me." And I took that thing around the block. That guy was sweating. He was so mad. And my mom was like, "Yes." So I think I've always found a way to try and to try and find that common ground with my male colleagues. And then, I've always sort of tried to gain that respect with them, and then we can work to do the work that we need to do. And we just are, they call me out, and I call them out, and we're just okay with that.
So if there was one small thing that, if there's a couple of men in a meeting room and 6 women in the meeting room, what might you guide these women to encourage the men to do in those meetings? How could they behave or change their behavior to truly be an active ally to the women that are in the room?
Make space is the answer. It's a classic phrase about being an ally, that your job is to open the door and invite others through it. And so if you are holding the privilege in the room, then your job is to amplify the voices around you and make room for them.
Yep. Listen. I would say listen.
So, so as a quick example, simply saying, okay, Joe, we've heard from you. Alison, what are your thoughts on this? Or, Stephen, we've heard from you. Emily, tell us more about what you're thinking around this. Is that are those simple examples of what you encourage?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because I think as women, we do tend to, we like to listen, and sometimes we take a step back. And so I think it's important that for those people, men or women, who are a little bit more forward, make sure that we are giving people a voice. And sometimes that means putting people on the spot, but that's a good thing.
Well, when it's a little uncomfortable, that's when we can learn and grow, right? And so maybe allow the men to be a little bit uncomfortable and hold that space. We've already heard from you. Make some room.
It is interesting because I also work with a lot of male colleagues, and we are getting more females in. And so when I have them males sit in a room with 4 or 5 of us females, they're terrified. They're terrified. They don't want to say anything. So it's important for us to create space for them to have a voice as well, because they're scared to say anything wrong. So they just don't say anything at all sometimes.
Wow. Did that spark something for you? Good.
I'm sure everyone in this room has heard the catchphrase, speak with the confidence of a mediocre white man.
I like that. That's a high five, for sure. That is a high five. Okay, I'm going to go on book again for you, okay? Just so you know here. So, Alison, I'm going to come to you. Earlier, Fotini shed light on the importance of effective communication. Drawing from your own experience, what specific communication strategies or tools have you found to be particularly effective in promoting clear and transparent communication within your teams and organization?
So I have a wonderful P&C team full of both men and women. And I think the one thing I have really realized over the years is that I need to take a step back and think about what it is that I want the team to say or the direction that I want to give them, and be super clear. And then when I talk in my team meetings and I have my one-on-ones with them, I kind of reinforce, because everybody hears a bit of a different message sometimes. And so I have to be super clear in what it is that I'm asking them to do. And then I ask them to talk it back to me. Okay, so what are you going to do? And what are some of the tools that you need, and how can I help you? So I think I can't say that I have mastered it 100%, but I think if I don't understand something, I make sure I ask those clarifying questions. And I keep asking the questions until I get it. Because if I leave that room and I don't have it, then I can't do a good job doing whatever it is that I need to do. So I want to make sure that my team has that space to ask me lots of questions, because sometimes when you're in a group, people don't want to do that. But one-on-one, we just need to make sure that they're comfortable. Well, they can be uncomfortable, that's okay. But we just need to make sure that they've got the support that they need to do what they need to do effectively.
Beautiful. I love it because you've just sparked something in my mind that I say often, and I'm going to say it differently today, but in the same words. Management doesn't know what it wants until it gets what it doesn't want. But even then, management still doesn't know what it wants. It just knows it doesn't want that. Leadership, women's leadership, is absolutely clear on what good performance looks like. And so how do we hear back what they understood? Interesting, interesting. Emily, I'm coming to you now with this one. As we prepare to hear from Dr. Wickenheiser, who's emphasized that complacency can be detrimental to success, how do you create a high-performance culture, motivating your teams to continuously push their boundaries and reach new heights?
So we talk about this actually all the time. Law is a high-performing environment, especially at a national law firm where we work. We handle business-critical disputes, bet the company litigation, and that's high-performing. And I think the number one ingredient to creating a workplace that fosters a high-performing team is a psychological safety. So creating a place where everyone feels free to discuss their mistakes, to learn from them, to own up to them, importantly, and then to go on and improve better. And that also includes where everyone feels free to express what they need in that moment. So if what they need is to take a beat, or if what they need is more information, as Alison just said, that you need an environment where everyone can do that quickly and with great trust, and then they can go on and perform at their best.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Very well said.
Another one from the audience. So I'll give you an opportunity to think about this a little bit more. What has been the value of having women in senior leadership roles? Have you noticed a change in culture, productivity, recruitment, and retention?
Most definitely. I've been fortunate enough over the last couple of years to work with a female president for Canada. She has now since moved down to the US, which made me very sad. But anyways, I'm glad she's still with Parkland. And she is a force to be reckoned with. So, you know, in the oil and gas industry, there aren't that many female executives. And the one thing that she has certainly taught me is embrace your power and don't be afraid to say what's on your mind. And she certainly doesn't. And she has certainly changed the shape of our senior leadership team because, you know, some things that you know, maybe people say or the way that they say it, she calls them out, says that's not okay. You know, she is a fantastic leader, and I can only say that when we have a few of those in the organization does start to change. And so all it takes is a couple. I certainly want a lot more, but it just takes a couple.
And I think the other piece too is women in leadership sometimes do it in a way that is different from the model that we have seen for hundreds of years. And there's something about seeing that different model of leading that invites other models of leading. So the old way of looking at that is, if you see it, you can be it. But I think actually what we need is, if you can see someone doing it differently, then you know that maybe you can do it too, in an even different way. So it's what we heard this morning, really, that what you want is to invite everyone to be themselves in the workplace. And you don't want to model a new way of being in the workplace. You want to say, you can bring your authentic self to this workplace.
I won't do it, but I will let you know there's a question for you here. Can Emily grace us with a very brief operatic piece? So I'll let you think about that as I go to another question here. Just you can warm up the vocal cords as we go. Just keep warming those up.
I bet that came from one of my colleagues. Does it?
It came from, guess who it came from? Anonymous. Yeah, Anonymous asked that question. And so here, another question for you, for both, and maybe we'll let you warm up a little bit. me. And Alison, will come to you first. But as accomplished women leaders, looking back at your remarkable journeys, what are some of the most profound lessons that you have learned? And what words of wisdom would you share with your younger selves? Talk to that 16-year-old girl.
Okay, so the words of wisdom I would give myself is, you know, you can do this, have confidence in yourself, right? You can do it. Sorry, what was the first part of the question again? The first part,
as accomplished women leaders, looking back at your remarkable journeys, what were some of the most profound lessons you've learned?
One of the profound lessons I think I've learned is that you don't have to do this by yourself. It is okay to ask for help. Pick a colleague that knows more than you do. You know, find somebody in your network that knows something that you don't, and rely on them to help you. You are not alone, so don't don't sell yourself short.
I love that. Mine is similar. The lesson I learned along the way is the same thing as I would tell my younger self, and it's still the same thing I say to myself all the time, and probably many people in this room need to hear it, which is, you are enough. Just you, who you are enough. You don't need to be different or other. You're enough.
Speaking of you are enough, there's a large audience that would like to know, how do you think the current shift to a non-binary society will affect empowering women to become leaders?
I think it's empowering us to have a greater understanding of gender. We're talking about it a lot more now. What we learn as a particular gender or what is tagged as a particular gender. And so I think the increasing discussion about gender is only helpful in that we're starting to talk about what is a female tagged trait in leadership, no matter the individual who might be bearing that gender.
I kind of look forward to having more of that conversation. And I look forward to it not being a conversation, that we have just adapted. I think we've got a long journey to go there, but you know, it is going to change, just like every generation that comes up changes and challenges. You know, I think this generation or this group is going to make us be better people. And we just have to have a lot of patience and understanding with each other as we go through that journey.
Yeah. I mean, we've always been there. We just didn't have space. Yep. And so it's incredible. And so, yeah, you know, as we look now then, as you look at leadership moving forward, what are you most excited about? I mean, look at this audience today and tell us, what are you most excited about? Emily, go for it.
The future?
Yeah.
I was at this conference, it feels like 10 years ago, it might have been, and it was, you know, maybe a quarter the size. There was space for round tables. The room was smaller. And look now at all of the women who are coming to all of the people who are coming to the Art of Leadership for Women conference. It's inspiring and exciting, and I am very excited for what the future holds.
Yes.
I would say the same, and I would say thank you to some of the men. I saw a few men in this room today, so thank you for coming as well, because it's going to take everybody.
And there we go. That's our time with Alison and Emily. I hope you found great value in this conversation. So thank you so much.